Hi everyone, good morning. So happy to be here today with Shumee Toys. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to talk about understanding healthy sexual development in children. I think it's a very important topic, and I'm so glad that we're here on a Saturday morning to discuss this. So I'm just going to wait for a couple of seconds and let people join in. Hello, everyone. Okay, as we wait for other people to join in, I'm just going to quickly, hi Chandni, I'm just going to introduce myself. Hi Nikki. So, good morning. I'm Anuja Ameen, a mother to two daughters and the founder of Circles of Safety. So, primarily what we do at Circles of Safety is we sensitize the community on preventing child sexual abuse. And at Circles of Safety, we strongly, firmly believe that an effective strategy to prevent child sexual abuse is to have early intervention. So you are educating your children, you are talking to them early on, giving them messages, educating them on body safety, you're talking to them about healthy boundaries and also consent. Having these conversations early on normalizes sexuality, normalizes the growing up process, and then it fosters healthier attitudes and behaviors in children. So today at Shumee, we're going to discuss a really, really important aspect. In order to educate our children, we first need to educate ourselves and understand which behaviors, as a child grows up, which behaviors are natural, normal, common when a child is growing up when we talk about sexual development. And I know that, hi Yamini, hi Usha, so glad that all of you are here today listening in. So as I was saying, very important to educate ourselves first on on what is healthy sexual development in children. Today we're primarily going to talk about 0 to 6 years. This is the bracket. Toddlers is what we're going to really hone in on. So if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to type them in. I love to sort of weave them into my conversation. So to begin, I just want to ask you a simple question. Have you ever been caught off guard when your child is maybe exploring, self-exploration, or is just curious about the body and is, asking you questions? Does it throw you off? Have you been in this situation? Because I'm a mother of two daughters and I can tell you that they ask questions at the most unexpected times, and although I have immersed myself in this knowledge, I often get caught off guard. So, what do you do? How do you deal with these situations? Let's try and understand a bit of that further. And, this is an uncomfortable reality of being a parent, dealing with these sort of situations. So, it's natural as a parent to think of questions like, is this normal? Should I be worried? How can I handle it? How do I respond? So, let's look into some of those questions. I have primarily slotted today's session into 3 parts. First is understanding what are the common behaviors when you look at sexual development in each age group, 0 to 2, 2 to 4, and 4 to 6. And then next we're going to deal with in that we will also discuss what is concerning, and then next we will look at how do you and what do you educate your children on. And lastly, we're going to look at how do you respond when you are faced with any of these behaviors. Okay, so thank you, Tanushri. Thank you all for joining. Good to be here. So let's get started on the first very important part where I think people and parents often wonder whether, how do I know what is normal, what is not? So just here I want to give you a bit of a reality check. Most parents believe that sexual development of a child is on pause till they reach the puberty age, when the puberty hormones hit. But I just want to tell you that it's a big reality check that sexual development starts at birth. And a lot of people think that it's probably crazy when I say something like this, but it's true, because we need to put our adult mind and hat aside for 2 minutes when I say this and understand. When I talk about sexual development, when I talk about sexuality, I'm not only talking about sexual pleasure, or I'm not talking about sexual acts at all. I am also talking about, yes, basic physical development where your body also grows and changes. And secondly, very important, so when we talk about toddlers, I am referring to things like the attitudes, the behaviors, the messages that they are surrounded by, that we as concerned adults, as caregivers, give our children. Okay, it could be teachers, parents, other community members who are constantly bombarding children with messages on what's appropriate, what is okay, what is maybe shameful sometimes, what is taboo. And so this is also a big sexuality learning as such that we say. Let me give you an example. So if your 3-year-old is roaming around naked in the house and a friend visits, what will you tell them? You'll probably tell them that, it's okay to be naked when you're having a bath, but it's not okay to do this in front of friends and other people. So, it's a good idea maybe to go put on some clothes, and you'll probably help them find their favorite t-shirt and put them on, right? So this is something that the child has learned what is socially appropriate and what is socially acceptable. So this is also a learning in sexuality for them. So if we come to the common behaviors that are observed as healthy sexual development in children, let's first understand what this looks like in 0 to 2 years. So when we talk about infants, what does that look like? Sometimes parents are concerned and they'll frantically call their pediatrician and say, when I was changing my baby's diaper, they were touching their genitals. Maybe the boy was maybe fondling his penis, and sometimes it's the girl who's maybe rubbing their vulva. So these are sort of common things that come up when parents are dealing with newborn babies, and it does sort of throw them off. And this is normal for them to explore their body. It's as simple as sucking their thumb or touching their toes, or just playing and learning more about what they're made of. Okay, so please don't worry with this. Another thing that is commonly seen is that toddlers and children between 0 to 2 years don't have inhibitions about being naked. So showing their body, etc., for them, these are very normal. They still don't feel shy about it. Okay, so it's absolutely normal if your child doesn't have these inhibitions. So remember that when we talk about this age group, intimacy begins at birth, and it begins when they're being held in their parents' arms, and it is their first lesson in love and trust, which is also a part of sexuality. And it is also a lesson when they learn about fulfilling their needs, if they're hungry, they're in pain, if they're sleepy, and how well that works with the parent. The reciprocity that happens really lays the foundation for, like I said, a loving and trusting relationship. So it's great to care and love them and caress them as much as possible to give a solid positive foundation. Around 2 years, they will also start noticing differences in bodies of boys and girls, and just overall differences between boys and girls. So this is up to 2 years. When we start looking at a child between 2 to 4 years, welcome to the age of endless questions of toilet training and pretend play. This is when that world really emerges. And so it's absolutely normal if they're asking you questions like, where do babies come from? Mama, why doesn't my sister have a penis? Or all these questions have really are real questions that I've received from parents. Okay, sometimes they may even ask you things like, when will my body start looking like yours, resembling yours? So these are all valid questions. The best thing you can do is be calm, maybe even just smile and say, give simple factual sort of answers to them about this, and you'll keep it simple, and you'll see they'll probably be satisfied with, suppose they're asking you, where do babies come from? And if you say that, a man and a woman, make sure you use man and a woman, because then they know it's something that happens as adults. If you say a girl and a boy, then they will think even they are girls and boys. So be sure that you use man and woman. Okay, so you can say something as simple as, when a man and a woman they come together and they make a baby. It's something as simple as that, and they'll probably be very satisfied. If they say, where do they come from? Then you can say, well, and that baby rests in the woman's tummy or in the belly. If the child is a little older, you can use terms like uterus, etc. So it's absolutely okay to use correct names of body parts. Very, very important to do that. And you will see that it normalizes these words at a very young and early age, and that's the best thing that you can do for them. So these questions are normal. Another thing, like I said, pretend play, engaging in consensual and playful exploration with other children who are about the same age as them, around like the same physical size, etc., in the same sort of age group, is perfectly normal. They may play doctor, they may play house, and they may even act out certain gender roles. They may even swap gender roles. These are all wonderful, healthy ways of exploring. So let's not get worried and concerned if about these sort of behaviors. Okay, another thing that happens this age, again, it's absolutely normal to touch your genitals. So masturbation, sort of a mild form of masturbation, is absolutely okay. And I know it may sound crazy to some of you when I say that, but understand this. Put your adult lens on the side, okay? Put your adult lens on the side, and you will see that it is more as a soothing behavior for these children. It's not sexual pleasure. So don't interpret it as what an adult would be doing. Okay, so keep that in mind, and you will see that it's absolutely fine. Sometimes when they're very nervous or they're anxious, you will see they're probably touching their genitals, and so this is all. If they really want to go to the bathroom really bad, you'll probably see that they're holding on to their genitals. So these are all very simple, easy things. I would again say that try and take a step back, understand what is happening first before you get very concerned about it. Another common thing again around this age is they don't still have any inhibitions around nudity and being naked. So don't worry. Gender identity does tend to start crystallizing around this age. So you will see that they will have strong preferences, and sometimes this is also guided and directed by what parents are doing, right? So if parents are bringing in pink things for a girl, getting kitchen sets for a girl, and getting these trucks and digger toys for the boys, and then it really starts formalizing around this time. You will see they will have preferences. So as parents, I strongly advise that try and keep your toys gender neutral. Also try and encourage a play that goes beyond the gender sort of norm. If your boys are playing kitchen set, that's absolutely fine, and don't be worried. It's not going to turn them into something that you're probably worried about, or let's have healthy notions of gender identity, and let's not stereotype and box our children into any of these. Okay, suppose around questions, I think somebody's asked a question. If somebody asks about like I said, why doesn't my sister have a penis? It can be as simple, the explanation can be as simple as, girls have a vulva. They are made differently. It's as simple as that. Something that simple will probably satisfy them until later, maybe when they want to know something else. So, keep it to that. Keep your all your communication age appropriate and developmentally appropriate. When we talk about children from 4 to 6 years, this band of children, again, it is very normal for them to imitate adult roles. So because they're surrounded and bombarded with so much information from the media, from TV, from songs, from parents around them and other adults in the house, they may, pretend to act like they're, married. Maybe they'll act and pretend like, they are marrying their friend, things like that, and talk about all of these things. But it's not serious. These are all normal fantasies. Sometimes children may also say things like, oh, I have a girlfriend or I have a boyfriend, but you have to understand that the feelings are still very different. It's nothing like what it's like when they're older. So again, try and stay calm about these things, and not think like, oh my God, where are you learning all of this from? And, don't start labeling them. Don't think that, I think judgment will do more harm than good. Okay, so it's important. The other thing, which is also very common around this age, is till about 4 years, the child was not so worried about being naked. Slowly, they start becoming shy. They start becoming conscious. They start, being more conscious about their body, wanting privacy, but at the same time, they are quite curious and wanting to see other people undressing and, being involved in other sort of things. So like they may not want to show their body, but they're still concerned and curious about others' bodies. Even at around 3-4 years, children are curious about their bodies, and they may even like try and touch their mother's private parts or something like that, just out of curiosity. What is it like? And it's nice to just use these as cues to say that, okay, my child is getting interested in their body and they're curious. And so start having a conversation with them about basics. And you will see that if you are able to satiate them with this knowledge, then they will come to you and you are building a solid foundation for future conversations. I mean, I think that's the best thing that you can do for your child. Okay. So if at around this age, 4 to 6 years, if your child is touching their genitals or masturbating in a more public space, like maybe say a sitting room or on the dining table or something like that, then it's a good idea to stay calm first and gently redirect their behavior into first to divert their attention and try and engage them in some other toys or something, and then to let them know that, what, grown-ups do this in private, so maybe you can also do this in private, and then explain to them. So through all these ages, you can explain what privacy is, and I will talk more about it in about couple of minutes, how to explain, because it's very important to get basic messages across to our children, okay, so they can start implementing it. It's also important when they are engaging in consensual play to remind them that to respect their boundaries and to respect other children's boundaries. So, maybe they're exploring and they're talking about private parts. Maybe they are, engaging in play like doctor. Then it's important to maybe walk in at that point and say, hey, let's wear our clothes, or let's try and do some art together or something, divert them at that stage, and then say, hey, you know what? These parts of your body are private, and it's wonderful to sort of keep them to yourselves, and it's not okay for somebody else to touch them or talk about them or take pictures of them, right? So I have a question here. So yeah, it's not okay for them to do any of these things to somebody else, and for somebody else to do the same to you. So it's important to talk about it as a two-way street. You don't hurt, harm, kick, pull somebody else, make them feel uncomfortable, and nobody else does that to you, right? So make sure you include both. So a lot of people wonder that, okay, all this can happen. How do I know that it's normal and it's not concerning? So I just want to give you a few pointers. All these behaviors that I've explained, if they occur between children who are of a similar age and similar physical size, then it's fine. But if it happens between widely differing age groups, like say a 12-year-old is playing doctor with a 4-year-old and says that, oh, why don't we remove our top and do this and that, then that is concerning. That is not okay. Okay, so that's one point. If this behavior occurs between children who generally play together quite a lot, who are very familiar with each other, know each other well, then it's okay. If this behavior happens, spontaneously, it is not planned and doesn't happen very often, if it's infrequent, then it's okay. Then it's nothing to be worried about, okay? It's also important that these behaviors have taken place voluntarily. So no child has been coerced into it. They have not been forced into it. There's no aggression involved. There are no threats involved that if you don't play this game with me, then I won't be your friend. If you don't play this game with me, then I'm not going to let you come to my house again. These sort of conversations with children, that shouldn't be happening. Both the children or whoever is involved should feel like the play has evolved naturally and they're comfortable. It's not making them upset being involved in this play. If that is the case, then it's absolutely normal and natural and nothing to be worried about. Also, when a parent intervenes in any of these situations and they try and distract and divert the child and change the course of the play, and the child stops once that has happened, and once the parent has explained some of these privacy rules or body safety rules and the child understands, that also makes this behavior okay and normal. Okay, because it was probably just that they didn't know that this was not okay, and so they've changed that behavior, and then it's okay. If this is something that happens, like I said, with an older child, if it's coerced, if they still keep engaging in this behavior, maybe more secretively, then it's cause for concern. And I would say that it's important to then discuss this with your pediatrician and maybe even get some more professional help to deal with these situations. If at any stage you have any questions regarding different age groups, what is normal, anything that I've explained, please share in the chat and I will address it. Okay, if not, I'm going to continue and talk about and just reinforce some of the key messages. How do we educate our children? What are the key messages that we need to talk to our children about? Okay, so here I want to give you 4 key messages. The first one is we must always use correct names of body parts, including our genitals. Do we say head, shoulders, knees and toes, right? Do we replace this with something else? No. So why would we not use the words penis, vagina, vulva? One thing I want to clarify here, that when we talk about the female genitalia, vulva is the more appropriate and correct term for it. So we say that, we can say anus. So, these can be easily interwoven into your messages. So sometimes, like say when you're helping your child clean up, say it's a 4-year-old and after they've been to the loo and you're helping them clean, you can say it's always important to move your hand from the vaginal or the vulva to the anus so that you are not spreading infection, So it's easy, or when they're having a bath, to say, hey, just make sure that you've even cleaned your penis, so something as simple as that. When you start using these words in your regular sort of language, then it's normalizes them, and there is no taboo or silence over it. Okay. The other thing that you can do to educate your children is answer their questions honestly, simply, clearly. I cannot stress this enough. Okay. We have grown up, I'm sure you can relate to this, we have grown up with people saying, shush, don't talk about this is shameful. If suppose we were running around naked, then it would be like, oh, shame, these, you cannot show these parts. There was so much shame, silence, taboo that was stuffed in our heads from a very early age. So we have to make sure that we are not perpetuating that cycle. I think if there is one key message you take away from today's conversation, I hope it is that. Also, so when you're answering their questions, keep it simple, and then you can follow up and say, hey, I hope if you have any other questions, let me know. I'm here. So they know that they can come to you anytime. Another important third point that you can educate them on is giving them a basic understanding of privacy. So like I said earlier, when it's a very young child, maybe a 2-year-old, how will you explain the concept of private? So I use examples. It really works for me to give scenarios and examples. So I would say something like, when you're having a bath, you're alone, that is your private time. And when we all have dinner together, or we're all baking a cake in the kitchen, that's a more public space where we can all be together, right? So being alone and being with more people. So that's how you can differentiate between private space, private time, and even private activities. So it's important to explain this to your children. So suppose if you catch them, like I said, masturbating or touching their genitals in public, important to tell them it's something you do in private. Like grown-ups do this in private. So you're also including yourself. You are not saying that this is shameful, that this is something that should be secretive. You're not saying that. Okay. So always keep that door open so that more conversations can happen. The fourth thing, very important, is talk to them about healthy boundaries. Okay. Very, very important that you tell them about consent. You tell them that when you're playing with other children, if they ever feel uncomfortable, that they should come and talk to a safe adult. It could be you, it could be other people that they trust, who will listen to them, who will believe them, who will guide them and help them. Okay. The other thing that you can also tell them is about how they also need to respect other people's boundaries. So if somebody is changing, if somebody has gone to the loo, if somebody is bathing, then you need to stay out because this is their private time. So start reinforcing, setting limits, setting boundaries, healthy boundaries, and I think that's wonderful. So we have a question here from Iravati Jayanti. What are some ways of explaining the concept of consent to babies? What's the right age to initiate this conversation? Such a good question. Thank you so much. So when we talk about consent and we talk about babies, sometimes I've noticed that when it's really like infants, it's basic things about when they are acting out, when they are lashing out, when they're showing that they're not comfortable. Suppose they don't want to change their clothes and we are like roughing it out with them and pushing them and forcing them to change their clothes. It's a very simple way of saying, I don't care what you think. You need to wear this dress for this birthday party because that is what is appropriate and that's what's going to happen. And you better listen to me. You are not showing consent, right? Instead, if you take a moment and you try and understand, and I know this is difficult because we have 100 and zillion things to do and we're always multitasking, but if you just take a moment and say, hey, okay, what's the problem? Do you not? And my daughter says, I don't like wearing dresses. And trust me, my daughter chooses to sometimes wear the worst of things when we're attending these events and functions, right? And so I just have to let it go and I say, listen, it's important to be presentable, and if this is what you feel comfortable in, fine, And I think over time, sometimes she has said, okay, what do you think I should wear? And we've had that conversation. But these are simple ways of showing consent. And when your question about what is the right age to do it, I don't think there's a right age. I think it's about modeling consent. So sometimes, like, when your child is, when you force them to eat, saying, your 2 rotis are not up, you better finish this. That's a way of saying that I don't care, there are no boundaries here. I'm not, respecting your boundaries and your messages. You need to put this food down your throat. That's not showing consent. So these are basic things that one can do, and I'm not saying that you give the child the power in that sense to sort of decide everything. No, you can lay out the choices, but just give them simple choices, not what do you want to wear completely. Say, hey, do you like this or would you like to wear this? That's a good way to start. Would you like to eat upma today or would you like to have poha today? So something like that. That's a good way to tell them that they have consent and they can choose what happens to them. Another very important way, which I was about to get to in healthy boundaries, where you can talk about consent, is let them decide how they want to show love, appreciation, or respect to other adults in the family. So suppose their grandparent has just is visiting them, and then you say, go hug dada or go sit in grandma's lap. That is not letting them, that's like sort of telling them that touch is not optional. Like, that's a way of showing respect. Let them select. If they are uncomfortable doing that, it's important to show respect. So you can say, do you want to touch their feet, or would you like to do namaste, or do you want to go make them some limbu pani and like lemon juice? And that's also a way to show that they are excited, they also care, and and giving them that space to decide what makes them feel comfortable is a big way of reinforcing consent. And I really hope that answers your questions, and I've given you various scenarios to give you an idea of how you can tweak this with different age groups. Okay, so touch is optional is a big thing. It's about consent, body boundaries. So these were the messages that you have to keep in mind, and giving this education and messages is a solid foundation for future conversations. Okay, please remember that, because as the child grows up, you're going to start talking about more complicated stuff when they're around nearing puberty, things more about values and loving people and liking people and infatuation. So if you talk about basics from now, you're building a great platform. Okay, so would really encourage you to do that. Finally, I just want to talk to you about how do you respond when you're faced with some of these behaviors, when you see children maybe in pretend play or other behaviors that I've explained. So first, the most important thing, like I said, is stay calm, and remember that how you react, how you respond, your voice, your gestures, the facial expressions you use is one of the first lessons that your child is going to get on sexuality. It will immediately tell them, this is okay, this is not okay, this is shameful, should I be worried about this, am I bad, shouldn't I have done this, things like that. Just very important. So stay calm is very important, and please don't use any labels, no disapproving words like how could you do that, bad boy, things like that, or bad girl, good girl sit like this. Please don't say things like that. Okay, cross your legs and things like that. Nothing like, you don't have to label it with good girls do this. Don't do that, please. Okay. The second thing that you have to keep in mind when you're responding is first take a step back and find out what was really happening. Because when we put our adult hats on, we just look and interpret things very differently. So we want to make sure we understand what was going through their head, not our head. Okay. And so ask very simple questions. The best way to find out are some of these very simple questions, like ask open-ended questions first of all, because yes and no, you're not going to understand what is happening. So when you ask open-ended questions, they can explain what they were thinking, their thought process. So ask questions like, what were you doing? how did you get that idea? It was very creative what you were doing. So how did you get that idea? Where did you learn this from? How did you feel about doing this? Because it's important to get our children to understand how it feels. Tomorrow, if they have to be more conscious about touch and unwanted touch or unwanted sort of behavior, or when they feel uncomfortable, they need to be in touch with their feelings. So it's important to reinforce this and ask them that, how did that feel? And then educate them further. So third step that you can do is, if you think the behavior was normal or even if it was concerning, it is a time to put in those educational messages that I just shared earlier. This is the time to talk to them about it once you've heard them out. Okay. And then if you think that the behavior was concerning after you've heard them out, after you observed what was happening, then like I said, it's important to talk to a pediatrician or get some professional help maybe to try and divert that behavior early on. We will not label. I see this happening in schools. I do a lot of workshop with schools, and sometimes teachers, sometimes parents tell me that, in our class, there was this one child, who did this, and they went and kissed a girl. They did, XYZ. And then that child becomes more isolated, and these WhatsApp mommy groups can be quite lethal for these sort of children who then feel quite, it's very difficult because they were just exploring and it was natural curiosity. And when that is not handled properly, it can be very damaging for the child. So it's important, early intervention is important. It is important that you also, by intervening early, you are correcting and changing their attitude and making it into and diverting into more healthy behavior and attitudes. Okay, so these were just some of my tips, very quick tips on understanding healthy sexual development in toddlers up to 6 years. And I really hope that you're able to take some of these messages back with you, share them with your children as and when things arise, and also with other concerned adults. I really hope, I understand that this may be a little out of your comfort zone, but I really hope that you can start this journey. There are enough resources available out there. Circles of Safety also does and shares a lot of information on this, so you can follow us on @Circles of Safety on Instagram, and we share and post a lot of information on various aspects of growing up, on preventing child sexual abuse. All these conversations form a solid background and foundation for your child to be more aware of their body safety and avoid and drastically reduce the risk of child sexual abuse. So get started on that journey. We're going to do a book review next week. So for all of you who are thirsty for some resources to get started on these conversations, look out on our pages also. Excuse me. So the book review will help you to start the conversation. Thank you so much, Shumee Toys, for encouraging these very important conversations and getting the community to be aware and vigilant and proactively educating their youngest to become more respectable in our communication and more tolerant in our interactions. Thank you so much. If we have any more questions, I can take them now. Let me just look at our chat and see if anything has come up. Wonderful session. I was aware. Didn't know this topic so many levels. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jessica. I'm so glad you found it useful. Okay. Yes, we are going to save this live. I think you can see it on the IGTV logo. If there's anything else you guys have questions on, feel free to contact us on our email address also, info@circlesofsafety.com. If there is anything else that I can help you with, Feel free to also direct message us, DM us on Instagram. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for being here. Signing off. Hopefully we'll have more of these conversations later. Bye and have a wonderful weekend.